So I have started my recording, and I'm going to switch over, and we can begin.
Let's go.
So, get pumped.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Everyone get pumped. Yeah, I don't know. Have you guys had your coffee yet this morning?
No.
No,
Oh
you
my
sound a
God.
little bit like a little under the weather. I don't know. We're going to get you excited. Let's educate some people today.
Yay.
Okay, here we go. So I'm looking at my title slide. Are you guys there? Decentralized Accreditation for
Yes.
Education?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So got that cool graphic. This is my passion project. My name is Gretton. I'm here to present to you, Jonathan, Jaguar, and Mina about this thing because it's worth a second presentation. We're going to get the audio recorded correctly this time. Awesome. So section 1, context. I'm looking at slide 2. There's a little number on the bottom right-hand corner you can keep up with. That'll help out. So here we are. This is the Earth. This is the situation. So humanity doesn't have any idea how to achieve sustainability at the moment. It's like very obvious we're on a bad path, and there are many pieces to this problem, and it's enormous, and it's one for a whole generation. But one of them is universal education. It's very simple to say. It's just we can study it all we want, but if people don't know what we're studying and don't understand what principles govern sustainability, we're going to get nowhere. And so next slide here, that's just, the speech bubble here. It's just according to me, this is my thought process. And this is what motivates me. So furthermore, if we go to slide 5, education has enormous economic value. And we also know that education has enormous social value, having an education, that is. So the global value of an education is actually in its certification and not necessarily in like the content of that education, both its economic and its social aspects. So I have a Harvard seal as an example here. It's very exclusive. So I'm moving on to slide 6 to give some little extra bits here. So the contextual value of an education here, it might be different. It might be, for example, based on your trustworthiness. So if I have a resume and I name some skills, like for example, HTML, no one's going to look at my resume and say, Dana, you're lying about HTML on your resume. There's just no point for me, right? Like at my stage, and I exist, I have an identity, there's no point lying. And so that might work. But the global value of an education is different. It's like the absolute baseline, the final say. If someone were to look this up and ask somebody who really was the authority, then they would know that I did in fact, go to Harvard, for example, or have some other exclusive accreditation. So moving on, slide 7, we're back. So just want to point out that education is an extremely non-zero sum game. That is, if I benefit from having an education in both these economic and social ways, it doesn't mean that somebody else isn't benefiting from it. It actually means that everyone is benefiting every time anyone teaches anybody anything. It's like a copy, it's not a transfer. So moral is, slide 9, if people can get the same economic and social value from education systems that they make themselves, then everybody can benefit. And that's the vast potential energy that I want to take advantage of. Everyone should be able to teach everybody. So what's missing? Slide 10. So with so much potential energy that I'm talking about here, people should have done something like this or completed everything in this arena that's possible, right? So what's different about the world today? What makes this particular aspect or like this angle on it different from anything that happened before? Okay, well, technological advance is the usual, right? So right now we have ubiquitous access to network shared digital information. I'm avoiding saying internet access because that's been a thing for a while. I am thinking about smartphones. I'm thinking about things with fingerprint scanners on them, and I'm thinking about relatively cheap electronics that are available in most parts of the world in the form of Chromebooks and similar sorts of devices, minimal electronics, and of course in the more developed parts of the world, like it's global. And the other thing is the new arrival of contractual, irreversible value transfer with new blockchain technology. So the important word there is contractual, and we'll go into a bit here, but for now, it suffice to say that value transfer that can be made in a principled and contractual way is important. So going on to slide 11 here. So the solution that I want to try to propose, or a solution, is just a decentralized, self-propagating learning system facilitated by an accreditation system that runs on a blockchain. So why blockchain? An interesting question. First of all, I just want to get out of the way that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, they represent just about the most boring thing that you can possibly do with blockchains, at least the Ethereum that most people know. They're just transaction records. All they do is say who gave money to when, or to whom and when. But they're way more interesting. Blockchains can attest to digital actions of almost any kind. Those could be computations, those could be signatures. Signatures, a subset of signatures are transactions. And that's the basis for all cryptocurrency. But you can do arbitrary computations. Complex computations can occur that everyone agrees on the results of. And so Ethereum does have some of that capability, but really the sky's the limit here. We can do computations globally that everyone knows the answer to. So moving on here to slide 13, I'm just going to read this. So blockchains, they also build in directly the concept of value transfer in a rule-based way, contractual way, yielding the fundamentally new field of crypto economics and a new way to shape human actions through positively structured consensual incentives. If you give people really concise, like very obvious rules that will lead to value, money, basically being transferred, that they agree to in advance, and it can't not happen, no matter how hard they try, no matter, you can't bribe anyone to make this not happen, then that's a very powerful thing, and you can make very complicated systems that way. So the complexity of the real world non-zero sum nature of education can be captured and used to guide it. We can implement rational designs. That means we can actually create systems on purpose with using principles, not just kind of design randomly and see what works, but actually let's pick what we're going to do and sort of prove to ourselves that they're going to work using some of the techniques from game theory and probability, that sort of thing. So slide 14, going into just what exists already. So this idea of a completely irreversible, confirmable, a globally confirmable certificate on a blockchain is actually, it's a good idea that other people have already had. And this got me pretty excited looking around and seeing that this already exists. So here's one example, Learning Machine, which is out of the MIT Media Lab, at least a group that budded from it. I'm going to page 15 with a little highlight thing there. They say Learning Machine provides a secure platform to issue records in a format that is tamper-proof, recipient-owned, and independently verifiable. And in little text up there, they have blockchain enabled. Like, it's this very exciting thing. It's enabled with blockchain. Amazing. We go on to slide 16, and here are 3 projects. There's the Digital Certificates Project. There is BlockCerts, which is an open initiative. So this is an open source project that has a relatively full-featured, I guess, way that people can lay out a certificate, and then you can go look up a certificate, and there's a front end for people who want to issue certificates, and there's an interface and I think an app for people who want to get certificates. So it's all very cool. And then there's also Open Badges, which is not blockchain-based, but has kind of a similar feel to it, which is where people can award certificates to other people for having completed certain actions or the courses maybe, or whatever. Some kind of value transfer happened, and so here's a badge to prove it. So all of these things already exist, and it's nice because going on 17, I just have this bottom right-hand corner, just good. The heavy lifting is done, amazing. It's really exciting that these things are already here for me because that means that I can build what I really want to do and I don't have to be down in the weeds. This is the level where I'd like to work on. So what's inadequate about these then? Slide 18. So the existing blockchain certification system, these ones that I've just been talking about, they fail to build on their own successes. They don't achieve weighty, deeply respected certifications, and they fail to motivate growth and adoption. So let's just dig into all those. So all of these systems have all of these problems, but I've taken each one of the 3 and just pointed it to its chief failure. So the Digital Certificates Project awards a certificate that anybody can look up on the Bitcoin blockchain for having attended a workshop or class at MIT specifically. And it's only been done, I think, for 3 different courses ever or something like that. So the reason I say it can't build on its own success is that once you give someone a certification with the Digital Certificate Project, it doesn't immediately suggest a way that you could then use that to certify another person or to build on that certification. that seems very important. You want this. You want to build a system where like progress is actually made, and you don't have to keep going through these pinch points of like teaching organizations that are already established. That's not the point, right? We also we don't establish weighty or deeply respected certifications with open badges, especially, for example. Anybody can give a badge to anybody else, and so basically you're outsourcing your credit to some other cause that you would then have to invent for why you and your open badges mean something. And so that means you maybe have to do your own branding, or you have to have a name, whatever it is. It isn't implicit to the system that a certification you give means anything. You are then responsible for proving it on top of that. And finally, block certs is very full-featured and very exciting, but it doesn't have any, basically doesn't have any advertising or anything that would serve the function of advertising. No adoption kind of incentives or exciting offers, or I mean, just basically it's just out there, and it might work for some people, but nobody's going to just pick it up for no reason, right? So basically, looking at slide 20 here, the pieces are all there. Like, we have the technology, but they need to be assembled into some kind of living system, something that we can just we can take this body that exists right now and just pump some blood into it and just get it up off its feet. So moving on to section 2 here, I'm going to start talking about the project that I have in mind, which I've been working on for a while, which is called provisionally called the Decentralized Accreditation System, or PICDAS. So, wait, what is so funny about that name? So the provisionally called the Decentralized Accreditation System, or PICDAS, is defined by some basic goals. It has some ideas about how it's defined. So we're going to work toward getting the opposite of the previous. We're going to want recognizable, demanding, meaningful, and prestigious awards. So in that order, the idea being that obviously a thing should be recognizable. If I say I've got this PICDAS thing, as of right now, no one has any idea what that means, and of course that must be fixed immediately. As opposed to Harvard, sure, that's recognizable. It needs to be demanding. So engaging with this PICDAS, it has to be known that it is really kind of hard to do. That it's not something you just walk into and walk out of and didn't really have to do much. It has to be demanding. It has to be meaningful, which is very closely tied. But that has the extra stipulation that if I give you a certification in auto mechanic work, that you can then take apart a car. There needs to be really, really very precise and trustable correspondence between these things. And then finally, prestigious. Now, I mentioned prestigious, but it's not as important. It's actually counterproductive because it implies exclusivity. But I still include it because exclusivity is exciting and good for social motivation, and it could be an important factor in the early adoption of a system like this, even if it's to be avoided later on. So next, accreditation may be trusted by orgs and used to satisfy real requirements. So this is coming from directly from an interview that I had with a lab person, or a trained lab technician, who also educates some people on the side. And I asked him what he might want to trade for participation in this. What would he want to get out of it, basically? And he said, yeah, if there was a way to use this certification he's giving as a refresher for his lab training that he has to do every year or every couple of years, that would be amazing, because it's not like he forgot. And if there's some other way for him to prove it other than going through these refresher trainings, boy, he'd love that. So that sounds like a great in to me. And that and a variety of other kind of very vanilla baseline certifications that people just need to take care of that could be used by orgs. That would be really good. That would be an important way in. So just some other basic stuff. There should always be something in it for a teacher who has something that they want to teach and can find a student to teach it to. We just want it to be the case. If you want to teach, there's a way to teach. There should also be a low barrier to entry. You can ask to learn a topic from anyone. However, you need to put down a stake before anybody can benefit from the system. And on success with the system, it's returned. So people who have worked on MOOCs, we all know that the main thing that is really distressing about them is their success rate, or maybe it's more effective to talk about their attrition rate. Something like 98% of people who begin don't finish. And so, I don't know, putting down a stake is just a very simple but very time-worn, proven method for getting people invested, and then they literally invested, and then they will get back what they put in when they're done, but only if they finish. So that's a good principle. It should be simple to use, of course. If it's too complicated, it's immediately failed. And specifically, nobody needs to know what a blockchain is, or what a cryptocurrency is, or what the relationship between those two things is, or what the modern state of technology is. Nothing. It should just be just like an app, just like something anybody can use. And finally, certifications need to be defined generally. So in this kind of nebulous fashion, but they need to be able to become more specific and become the basis and impetus for a more advanced education system that might grow where there was no education system before. That's the ultimate goal.
What do you mean impetus?
Impetus, just like motivation. If you have this thing as a foundation, then you can kind of use it to drive. Maybe somebody wants to start a school. If there's something in it for them, and they know that if they kind of draft onto the system, then it could provide the impetus for building that school.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
All right.
hoping.
And when you say word learn before, you mean like informal learning, stuff that aren't covered in schools traditionally and so on?
Yeah, that's right. And it could be that kind of like auto mechanic sort of deal, right? And it could also be just teaching kids algebra. Algebra is a school you can teach to 5-year-olds, but it isn't usually done. But if someone decided they wanted to do it, yeah, they could do it.
Okay.
So the foundation of Pictos, is slide 23 here. It has like a combination of strong culture and economic viability. You need to have both of those things, and it's very much like a, I don't know, typical startup pitch here. But the phrases I want to keep in mind are like a Pictosser behaves like a Pictosser. If you have a well-established culture, then that should be a phrase that actually means something. Like, yeah, sure. And then also, Pictos is changing my life without taking it over. That's a very important thing. That's basically economic viability. Yeah, you want it to be reasonable to participate with it. Cool. So just a quick summary of the culture that I want in Pictos here. And just a side note, it's very similar to the approach taken by the Grameen Bank, where the 16 decisions that they set out at the very beginning gave the best practices that keep the system and participants healthy to this day. It's still working and is very successful. So yeah, a Pictos, sorry, typo there, I don't know what a Tindus is. Users understand that, for example, this education system is serious and to be taken seriously. Baseline, but like if that isn't in there, then people start giving awards for being able to, I don't know, grow illicit vegetables or something. And so like this, it needs to be important. And then I'll skip down a bit. So the golden standard for teaching is one-on-one tutoring, for example. That's like not necessarily a globally accepted sentiment, but I think it is, or like maybe should be. And in any case, if you're going to have Pictos be a successful system, then you should basically be on board with that idea. And so, yeah, there are many others, as I'm saying in the bullet 10 there. There might be others, maybe some of the above that I've mentioned are not needed, but let's go into the next slide, 25, just to look at what are the types of things that I'm trying to represent here. So the first 4 I've just categorized as like attitude. How should you think about Pictos? What's your, what's your orientation? There's also just plain logistics and maintenance. Yeah, so like if someone's having difficulty, go help it. If that's like a very basic part of the system. And in like, for example, Grameen Bank, if one of their branches fails, it's one of the decisions to like send people out there. Like you will stop what you're doing, drop it, go out there and help them get back on their feet. So like that's logistics, right? That's maintenance. These are really important ideas. And then finally, we have some broader things. What's the inspiration? What's the direction? How should people be taking this as it develops in the future? Because of course, no system like this can possibly be made once and stay static. It will be innovated on, and you want to set that direction. So great, that's neat. There's a lot more on that later, but we should go into the economic viability of Pictos, which is kind of where the new stuff comes in. This is where the actual idea is. So this is going to be the explicit implementation of its incentive structure and hopefully convince you why it works. So super basic situation on 26, you have a teacher who is skilled, and they're going to teach and then certify a student. And so moving on to 27, I'm going to take a quick detour to run you through just the graphics that I'm going to use in the next few slides. So this is a trust score. So do you trust that this claim is true? And this bar gives you a readout. I've just labeled this one's unconvinced. If you go to 28, that's what I'm showing for basically no information. You have no idea. On slide 29, I show a likely graphic. And then finally on 30, I show this is trustworthy. So moving back here, we'll just look at the same diagram, but it's now labeled with my graphics. So skilled teacher, master of topic, we're looking at the trust score that they are a master of the topic. And so now they've certified the student, and there's some vague trust that the student might also be a master of the topic. So good. So let's say that we get evidence from some outside source that the student is super good at their subject, and they really did learn it, and it went great. Going on to slide 33 now. If you can see, the difference between 32 and 33 was an increase in trust in the student master of topic score, which makes sense because obviously that's what the evidence is. But then moving on to slide 34, there's this implication arrow, this like an arrow of external causality or like sideways causality. And then between 34 and 35, you can see kind of the appearance of this question, like where's this coming from, right? But excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. Between 33 and 34, when that arrow appears, that also comes along with an increase in the confidence that the teacher is a master of the topic. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But like what this incentive, for example, is would that we be within the system, or how would someone outside the system be incentivized to provide outside evidence?
Oh, I mean, like, are you anticipating basically slide 35 here, which is just where the heck is this coming from?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, slide 36, I'm going to go ahead and try to break that down. So I've just taken the same diagram and moved it over so you have some more room. So if you look at 37, I've now just added a student, and the student wants to now learn a new thing. And so they've asked a teacher outside the system for a totally new topic 2, and they say, can I learn this? Sure. So caveat though, in slide 38, I showed that actually topic 2 has been described as a excuse me, just a second. Topic 2 has been described previously by the teacher of topic 2 as needing topic 1 as a requirement or something equivalent. Meanwhile, the student wants to take it, and so they have been certified. They should have that prerequisite. If we move to 39, we can see that the topic 2 teacher has taught and certified student in topic 2, and that has shown up at the bottom of the student's kind of repertoire there. They are, in some confidence a master of topic 2. But let's look at the extra implications here. So here comes that arrow again, the implication arrow. And in slide 40, we've seen that it's increased the confidence that the student has mastered topic 1, because topic 1 was required for topic 2. And if they mastered topic 2, well, that's good too. And then also, since the student did demonstrate that they understood topic 2, it's increased the confidence that the teacher of topic 1 in the first place was also good. And so the arrow on slide 41 is also showing an increase in the confidence of the teacher in topic 1. So in this way, yeah.
It's just like paying attention to details way too closely. But if you go up to slide 33, before evidence comes in,
yeah,
then it's kind of like a half bar, a little more than half, 60% build, same as a student actually. So then wouldn't the teacher keep that level all the way until slide 41? Until teacher 2 does that implication that you know the stuff?
Yeah, isn't that what happened? Teacher...
No, it kind of bumped up before there was evidence, and then it was like, where did that evidence come from?
Oh, and then you're saying if I ask the question, where did the evidence come from, then it should have gone back down again? Because we're kind of doing a rewind?
No, I'm just saying, well, right, yeah, we're rewinding, going back to before evidence came in.
Good call. I was thinking of it as like, say there were evidence, and then going forward from slide 36 onward would be like, okay, let's see how we might be able to accumulate more evidence. That sort of way. But yeah,
so then
that's a little confusing.
So then what's the asymptote? Sorry. It seems like this would just go until 100%, but then what does the asymptote symbolically mean?
Oh, I mean, so
the
if you have
teacher's skill.
if you have groups of people all certifying each other and like being able to certify teachers and or being students, oh my gosh, being teachers who can certify students who are then themselves certified, then you end up with like nests basically of people who are all interrelated and all with high confidence that they can teach. And so I guess there isn't really a big difference between somebody with like 99.999 and 0.9999 confidence, right? Basically, it's just you're there. The important part would be trying to get people up there. Is that your question?
Well, like how fast do they get there, and like what does 100% mean, or what does 99.9 mean?
Oh, there isn't
Is
100%.
it
That's
like
for
a
sure.
professor of a university, or is it like yeah.
No, it never means anything more than what you've claimed. It just says like, if this is learning how to like use the division bar in algebra and like being able to like take the right side of an equation and move it under the left side when you do that, and like that's your entire class, then your trust in that topic would just be, do you understand that yourself?
Yeah.
Right, and so you'd have a 99.99999, like a lot of nines probability of really understanding that idea, but it wouldn't get you any further than that.
Cool. So it's like that paper that I got an A on back in elementary school.
Exactly.
It's like, no one cares.
Right. You have an exceptional proficiency at that particular paper.
Sweet.
Yeah. So cool. I'm going to move us back to 42. So that's where some words appear. So I just want to outline, like in this kind of simplified situation, what were the assumptions I was working with. So one thing I was saying is that the mastery of a topic is the same thing as your teaching ability in that topic, which of course, as everyone who's ever been to a university knows, is definitely not true, or at least shouldn't be assumed. And there's also just that requirements are accurate. So is it really true that topic 2 really requires topic 1? And furthermore, does the teacher even understand the content of the class that they have noted as a requirement? Maybe it sounds like it's a requirement, but they don't know exactly what's really in it. So all of this like kind of folds into it. All of it could potentially mix things up, and you have to anticipate it. But I've ignored those things.
Right.
So yeah, but the thesis here on slide 42 is just that complex updates occur throughout any time new information becomes available when somebody participates in PICTUS. So just to summarize the characteristics of a PICTUS accreditation.
One assumption is also that can I have a quick question?
Yeah, no, please.
So I'm looking at slide 42, where teacher of topic 2 was not in the PICTA system from the beginning. So they were incentivized to join the system because they were teaching a student who requested them to give them credit in the system. So that's how they joined in. Is that a fair assumption? Is that how it would work?
That's not the way that I was looking at it necessarily. But it definitely could work that way, yes. Like, do you want to just run with that and then ask? So, like, for example, looking at slide 37, we're going to say the student wants to learn from teacher of topic 2, but topic 2 teacher has not even joined PICTUS yet. So they say, can you teach this? And the teacher of topic 2 says, okay, sure, let me get that together, and then sets up a class that requires topic 1. Is that right?
What if they...
Right.
Okay, cool. So go ahead.
No, yeah, but what if what if that person if that teacher of topic 2 is not within using the PICTA system? Like, what will incentivize them to join in, and so on?
Well, I mean, good question, right? So, like, if this whole thing is working and it does, in fact, like, provide the benefits that I'm hoping it would, then hopefully that would answer your question right there. That, this thing does actually hold some weight, and so this teacher, knowing something and having an interested student, like one of the tenets of PICTUS is that it would then be worth it for this teacher to participate, right? So I don't know if I can answer that immediately other than convince you that the system works,
that
right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but that makes sense because if he knows that then I can put teacher 1 topic as a prerequisite, then they will see that my topic as a next step, and that might be a source of income for me later. That might be one way it works.
Yeah,
anyway,
totally.
Continue.
Right.
I have a question.
Sure.
Like for a teacher or anyone who's new to this PICTUS system, so when he comes in, he doesn't have any sort of master of any topic, the level yet. So how could he, when he gets in, how could he get it immediately? Like for the student, he already has the master of topic 1 and master of topic 2, But for another student who wants to learn perhaps topic 2, and he needs the requirement of topic 1, but he already knows it from like outside the PICTA system.
Sure.
So how could he like wrap it up really quickly?
Yeah, I mean, so this system that I've given you, the few blocks, like, is missing a vast amount of complexity. And so basically with these few slides, I'm attempting to show you that when you introduce new information, you can make implications about previous states of the system. And I'm not trying to say this is really how it would work. What you're saying is really important. In order to like actually answer your question, I have to draw a bigger diagram. But the main idea is that this teacher can either choose to show or to say that the student is being certified to have finished the requirement to take their class by the teacher of topic 1 on the left there, or they can choose to say that this student already knew this information and there won't be any link to any previous teacher in the system. And that's also fine. But all that means is that that link of implication will be broken and nobody's trust scores will benefit from a successful certification in that topic.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I'm able to get all those words out. Even I, like... Anyway, I think we should move on if you're good.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So the characteristics of this PICTAS accreditation on 43. Important thing.
Whoa.
Yeah?
Go on, sorry.
Okay, cool. So the accreditations themselves are not static. They evolve over time. So the description of it is static, but how much you trust it starts off low and then accumulates trust over time and can take enormous hits in trust if it doesn't actually pan out or prove to have been worthwhile. That's really important. It's very important for the trustability of a certificate. If there's no way for it to be proven false, then it's not going to be able to work. So yes,
that's important. But like just thinking about that with actual people, like one day I'm going to work and I have a pretty good confidence and then I know my stuff, and then tomorrow I'm like 50% and I can't get any work because everyone's like, you don't know your shit, which is good, but also just like, oh,
it's kind of good.
It's gonna be like micro.
No, actually, though, can we take a sec to break that down? Because like what that would mean is that you were staking your entire reputation and your ability to prove yourself like good in that skill on like one other person. And you might have done a really good job certifying them, and they may have gone on and done great things. But if one day someone discovers that they were cheating and they lose their certification, that basically means no one has any idea whether you taught them or not, or whether you were any good. And so that's actually kind of on you. What you should have done is taught a lot of people and had them all be successful. And then if one of them fails, then that's no problem for you.
Well, I'm thinking about like maybe what if there's like 100 or 1,000 people involved with this? So like it's kind of like a micro financial whatever it starts with an R.
Yeah, sure. Microcosm? Like
it could be like I'm trying to think about like when there is a recession and like the price of corn goes down or something, then like the farmers that were working on this one day and that corn is worth $1, and then the next day it's worth 50 cents, and then like kind of devastates small areas. Could that be something? Could something similar happen here?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of depends on whether, yes, in the case of corn is like a clearly valuable thing, and everybody understands that if you eat it, it's good for you, or like can serve as food, whatever. So like if it drops in price, that's definitely a sad thing, and we should like try to think about how to avoid that. But in a kind of equivalent educational context, it isn't necessarily so clear that that's a bad thing. It's like if a big community of people are all certifying each other in medicine, and then it turns out that if they go out and try to use that certification to build higher medicine like certifications, but elsewhere in the world, and it actually turns out that they don't have like real medicine knowledge. They sort of have more sketchy or provisional medicine knowledge, and they were very confident in it, and their whole community was, and they're all certified, but it isn't actually good. And so in that case, it would be an unfortunate circumstance, but in that case, it would be the best thing if all of their certifications were to expire because they were all built on clouds, basically.
Wow. So two things. That like that like forces communities that are teaching bad stuff to teach good things.
Yep.
And that's cool. That's what you want. And also just like the whole talking about holes in your education or like holes in your understanding of a subject, they're bubbles and they pop, so you can't have any. That's
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. You try to move forward with them, and then over time it just sort of becomes apparent where the failure was. Yeah, hopefully. Cool. So so each accreditation is importantly offered by a particular person. Just back to definitions. So you can't just be an electrician certified by Pictus. You have to be an electrician as taught by Tesla in the year 2013 or something. So like there's this very specific class that was offered and certified by one other entity in the Pictos system, and there isn't a centralized idea for like what the roster is, not like a university registration system. A trust score is always presented along with an accreditation. So if you say I'm an electrician according to Tesla, this is the trustworthiness the system places in it too. By itself, it's worthless. Accreditations, they start off uncertain and gain more certainty. I guess we've mostly covered this. So importantly, trusted networks of good teachers, they converge on highly trusted mastery of their subjects as new students come in and go out again and are successfully able to teach other people their things. It becomes very apparent that these teachers not only know their stuff, but are also good at teaching. And that will tend to nucleate communities that all support each other and are able to teach students that build on each other's knowledge. So that's like, it's kind of hopefully establishing pipelines kind of as an emergent characteristic. We have the fact that teachers who certify those they have not taught well are inferred to be bad at their topics, and their trust scores suffer, as we just spoke of. Yeah. So we just should talk a moment about a trust metric and what am I using here. By this time, I've been talking quite a bit about how it's possible to isolate causes far back in chains of causality, and you're like, oh my God, how are we ever going to do that? Any ad hoc way of doing trust metrics could potentially work, but it's really hard to make it right and to know exactly where the failures were. Also, how do we know general things like if you keep on updating these trust scores, how do we know they don't all go to zero over time? Is there a normalization? Is there something we have to come in and do now and then to be like, well, your trust scores used to be like on a 10-star basis, but now if they're out of 3 basically because nobody really gets above 3, that sort of problem. And also, if you have 2 possible causes for a failure, you don't necessarily know whose fault it was, then what do you do? So slide 45, this is the reason that I'm going forward with Bayesian inference networks as my proposal for this, this trust metric. So each trust metric is basically just a probability that the system places on your having, like on that particular statement being true. For example, I know how to teach blank. And so Bayes nets are really good because they can handle enormous complexity with a gigantic number of dependencies. And for example, the picture I've shown here is for diagnosing cancer and showing like all kinds of different causes and known like sort of tenuous links and possible ways to glean information. And it all just kind of goes through the system, filters and leverages what it knows to the best of its ability. It's basically like killer app for BayesNet. And it comes with certain math guarantees. So I mean, everything, all the probabilities are normalized to 1 all the time, right? So certain issues like what I was speaking of earlier don't arise. And so that's important, but using Bayes nets rather than some other arbitrary scoring system like Glass or Black Mirror style, it promotes algorithmic transparency, and it also provides an argument for legitimacy. That is, someone can look at my system and say, I can see how they modeled education, and I can see what their update procedure is. I can just look at their tables of probabilities and see where they came from. And then there's also this argument, like this is not just, we maybe thought this would work and now we want the world to listen to it. It's legitimate, and this is the reason why. So let's just, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, just want to underscore like the importance of algorithmic transparency.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
reading this book in a book club called Weapons of Math Destruction, and like the insights from the book of how these algorithms that rate college scores or whatever, like when you don't know what data they will look at, it's just that's a very bad effect in society. So I think this is very key. This is really good.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
I feel like half the Media Lab is doing augmented reality. I feel like the other half of the Media Lab is doing algorithmic transparency. So like we're in a good spot for that. Yeah, I've heard really good things about that book as well. Yeah. Okay, cool. So moving on to slide 46, we're basically done, but I just wanted to give a quick sneak peek underneath the hood for like what I believe could potentially go into an actual element of the PICTOS system. So this is something that might really go onto a blockchain. So the following is just like a data block. So we have some participant, Kelsey Hurley, and then a unique identifier, and her identity is enforced. Now, we haven't talked about identity enforcement and how to make sure that somebody's identity is consistent and not stolen and not revised or whatever. That's its own presentation in of itself, but that's, of course, a key important thing. Speaking of keys, the next thing is a public key, which is just generally Kelsey's way to sign things, and then people can use the public key to make sure that she was actually the one responsible for signing something. It's a signature confirmation information block. So for people who don't know cryptography, that's the general idea, and for people who do, this is the basis of blockchain. We have the provisionally called teacher-defined topics, or PCTDTs, as I'm calling them here. And so, for example, Kelsey's teaching Newton's third law as offered by Kelsey Hurley. There's also a model trust score. So this model trust score is not stored on the blockchain, but I just want to mark that there is a trust score associated with the fact there is a perfect description offered here, and Kelsey has teacher-level mastery of the thing described. That's what that trust score indicates. And then there's the description. It says, the math and the intuition for presumably something about forces. And then so we have as prerequisites listed scalar algebra as offered by Jamie somebody, right? And then forces as vectors as offered by Pablo or something or other. And so they're given. And then also associated with each of those, again, not stored, but kept track of by the system computationally, are more model trust scores. So these are ones I imagine you might actually want. A correct understanding of the prereq was held at the time of any authorization or any accreditation by Kelsey. And also her ability to assess the student's mastery is high and is trustworthy itself. So those two things are not the same, and both need to be traded off, or you can do inference over the two of them separately. But you need both of them to be the case in order for a certification based on a prerequisite to have viable repercussions backward through the system to propagate. And then finally, there's a list of awardees who have gotten this certification, Newton's third law. Moving on to 47, it continues on the next page here. We have certifications, Kelsey's certifications in other PCTDTs. And so, for example, we have Newton's fourth law, a history, a mystery. And so then we also have more model trust scores. Does Kelsey herself have teacher-level mastery? Does she have the ability to identify prepared learners suited to her teaching style and effectively teach them at teacher-level mastery? So here's an example where I've taken two things that are both important, but I didn't think it was necessary to do inference over both of them simultaneously. And so I combined them into one trust score that just has an and joining the two of them. And we can talk about why I did that, but I think there are certain places in the model where you have to make simplifying assumptions. And I think that's a reasonable place to do it. And of course, this is all up for design. This is very much a prototype. And then finally, other information,
Right.
whatever else you might need to store, graphical interfaces, images that have nice pictures on them for universities, who knows.
Okay. But you said that sorry, what was it? Yeah, you said that the scores are not stored on the blockchain, but so basically, whenever you want to see a score, you derive it through the algorithm, or what do you mean by that?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So they aren't. Yeah, exactly. They are not stored, and they're kind of implicit in the structure of accreditations given or not given to various people. So yes, they're calculated on the fly. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go scan the entire blockchain anytime you want one of those. It just means that they're cached, and then you may have to do one or two extra computation steps yourself to confirm it, because those last two may not have been added to the blockchain recently.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. So there's like a constant global state of we all agree that we got here, but then there might be subtle updates on top of it with new information. Cool. So just a summary of PICTOS. So it's a prototype. This is slide 48. It's definitely in progress. It's a generally decentralized accreditation system. It's in the concept phase, and it has a really terrible name that must be changed as soon as possible. It will be developed by first publishing a white paper that will outline its specifications. It will be implemented in an arbitrary computation-capable blockchain. Now, there are a few options for that coming up. Ethereum will work right now, actually out of the box, but it's very limiting. You can only program in Solidity, and there are certain styles of computation it's not well suited to. Caching and then like operating on the cached information is a little tricky in Ethereum, according to my limited understanding. Tendermint is a technology that I'm really excited about, and I've been talking to their development team about possible applications here, and they seem pretty excited about it, especially in its way to interface with other blockchains, like, for example, other cryptocurrencies and other blockchain services that are coming down the line, like Microsoft's blockchain-based inter-financial system links. They're calling it, oh dear, well, I'll post afterward. It's fine. That's another blockchain system, though, and you may want to interface with it. So Tendermint is good for that. And finally, it will be open source. Everything should be open here. So what further questions do we have on slide 49 here? I'll say that most of these questions do have answers, at least like provisional answers, things that I think have answers anyway. This presentation is already too long just describing it, but we should talk about these things later. So those are excellent questions, and I'm happy to address any of them. But here we are. That's Pictus.